Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Group Chat, a webinar series from the Next Gen Public Media Initiative at the Joan Ganz Cooney Center at Sesame Workshop. In these webinars, we bring together teens and young adults in conversations with other adults about media and technology in the lives of young people. I'm your host, Dwight Dunston, and we've got a very, very special webinar coming up today. We're featuring some young adults and adults who have been professionals for quite some time. In conversation with one another, we have folks from the Mississippi Public Broadcasting, as well as WNET in New York. And these four folks will be talking about the work that they did at the Cooney Center's Next Gen Public Media Accelerator earlier this year. MPB launched a podcast with their student council, and WNET started the Amplify Series as part of their youth collective. We're excited to have these folks here, and we're going to bring them in. How's everybody doing today?
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome. So we are just going to do a quick round of introductions and just going to ask folks to say their name, the work that they do in the world, or the grade that you are currently in. And then just sharing one thing one word to describe how you are here at the beginning of our combo. So I'm going to start with Hannah.
Hi, so happy to be here today. My name is Hannah Dawe. I am a coordinating producer in Kids Media and Education at the WNET Group, which is New York City and the metro areas public media station. The work I do is with young people as part of Youth Collective. And one word to describe how I'm feeling at the beginning of this convo, honored to be a part of this conversation and conversation with you all.
Beautiful. Thank you, Hannah. I'm going to pass it on over to Jeremy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jeremy. I'm a rising junior at Columbia. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, and I was part of the Youth Collective program this summer. And I'm pretty excited to see where this conversation goes.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jeremy. Jasmine.
Hello. My name is Jasmine, and I work with Mississippi Public Broadcasting. And I am the lead person for our MPB Student Council. And to describe how I'm feeling about this combo, I'm super excited. I'm looking forward to the discussion and the conversations and the topic, and just to have that partnership opportunity to meet with Hannah and Jeremy.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jasmine. And last but not least, McKenna.
Hi, I'm McKenna Mead. I am currently a freshman at Northwest MS Community College. And one word to describe how I'm feeling would probably be bursting at the seams with excitement.
Thank you so much, McKenna. Thank you, everyone, for those intros. And we are going to get right into it with our first segment, which is called How I See It. So in just a little bit, we're going to have either a video or a caption, an article pop up on the screen, and we'll go around the room and ask each of you in your specific identities, experiences, expertise to just describe how you see that quote, that blurb, that video. So without further ado, we have first up this is from a spring project back in the spring. WNET announced an open call for youth creators to collaborate with them and to get paid for their work. So we're going to take a look at how they first opened the call to connect with young people like you, Jeremy, who participated in this. So I'm wondering, Hannah, if you can just walk us through what we're seeing here, and curious about how you all first got the word out for this open call and what different avenues you use to connect young people with this opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're looking at here, this is one of the slides that was in a deck that was a call for submissions. And this is part of our Youth Collective initiative, which is a Gen Z media and education initiative at the WNET Group. And really at the core of it, it's about amplifying youth voice. And it also has a lens of ethics. We have a connection with Youth Collective to ethics education. And really what that means is all about taking different perspectives, learning how to talk about different, sometimes conversations that are difficult to talk about with people from different perspectives, and sharing unique perspectives based on, where young people are coming from. And so our call for submissions was really focused on that. We wanted to work with young creators who are passionate about issues And you'll see we have the little asterisk, the hint, your story and perspective, because it was really important to us that we were welcoming all different stories, all different perspectives. And we know that in public media, there's a lot, there's often a lot of journalism that we get to hear from young people. And we were really excited to, maybe if that was what someone was excited about, to share, but also if a young person was excited to share a deeply personal story or something, a different kind of take on what it meant to kind of communicate that and share that. So we opened up the call to artists of all kinds, filmmakers, photographers, illustrators, animators. We wanted to make sure that they knew that they would be compensated for this work. And so we had these kind of mini grants that we were going to offer to the creators who we selected. And we included some examples, and we really tried to put this out into the world in many different places. We posted it on our own Instagram, and we sent it out to our network of teachers and schools and nonprofits and connections we know. And we also just started like DMing Instagram accounts that we thought were kind of connected, because we really, really wanted to meet young people who we didn't already know. We've worked with a lot of wonderful young people, and one of them ended up being our creators, someone who we'd worked with before, but everyone else is brand new to us. And that was really, really exciting. And that's how we met fabulous young people like Jeremy.
Wow, beautiful. And that, so many questions are bubbling up, but I want to, the one that's right on top is just, Jeremy, you see this call that's looking for folks, the creators, this line that your story and perspective. I'm just curious about how did it draw you in? What did you think about it at first? And what was that experience like being a part?
Totally. Yeah, I think when I first saw this call sheet, I was probably hooked right away. The first thing that popped up to me was like the color scheme is really bright. I was really interested. Thought the design itself was really well made. Yeah, and then obviously I read more into it, and just really appealed to me, because I feel like this program specifically was asking for like youth voices, and I feel like often youth don't really get many ample opportunities to talk about what they're thinking about. I feel like it's a pretty common thing for youth to not be treated super seriously, or their voices to be heard until they grow a bit older and fill those positions of authority. So the fact that I kind of got this opportunity to do this now was something that was really interesting, and I immediately jumped on board and applied, and I guess it worked out.
The rest is history, right, Jeremy? The rest is history, as they say. Wow. And would love to come back to you for just a second, Hannah, and appreciate that, Jeremy, because it's just awesome to hear how it caught your eye, what brought you in, and it sounds like a really rich experience for you. And Hannah, from your perspective, taking all the way from when this call first goes out to the very last gathering or wrap up, yeah, how did things work out from your perspective?
Oh, awesome. And what a great question. And I could talk about this for literally the entire webinar, so I'll try to keep it brief. But what I'll say is that, what was so exciting was we got so many incredible applications. It was really hard to choose. And that's both the skills, the artistic skills that these creators were bringing to the table, and also just the range of topics they wanted to explore and that they were passionate about. And so we really tried to kind of create a cohort and have content and perspectives and creators who were, diverse and bringing a lot of different things to the table. And it was a hard choice. There were so many great creators, but I think that we love the 5 who we chose and we've gotten to work with. And I think something that has been so wonderful about the process, and at least from my perspective, is that it has felt collaborative. I think that, we hope that it's been a good experience for the creators, but I would say that we've learned so much, both one-on-one in the relationships that we've created and the projects with our creators as individuals, and also just kind of largely things we've learned about how we can be better as public media and as supporters of youth media. And there was a lot that I'm very grateful our cohort of creators put up with us with things that we didn't really think of in advance, because we were experimenting and growing. And so they were very generous with us and with our feedback. And I think that we've taken a lot from the experience and all the way through the finish line. And it's something that I think now we're really excited to keep growing and keep doing.
Wow. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And I'm so excited to hear about that work that WNET has done. And I want to zoom us out and get some of our MPB folks in here. Just curious of when you see this call, from your perspectives, what do you see? And was there something similar that it might have connected with at MPB that you want to bring into the conversation? And yes, I want to open it up to McKenna and Jasmine.
Jasmine, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. So one, I want to commend you, Miss Hannah, and WNET for what you do for student and amplifying their voices. And I was able to attend actually one of their conferences or events. I want to say, I think it was a teen conference. And so I kind of got that one-on-one experience of what they're doing and how they're experiencing using youth and using youth in public media. Specifically to the project, one of the biggest things that we learned through research as it pertains to students in the next generation is having a seat at the table. They need to have a seat at the table. And so public media, we've been meeting for a while. We've been doing a lot of research regarding how are we going to get this next generation of students into public media? And it's not necessarily saying that students are not aware of public media or don't want to go into public media. It's like, where do they get their resources from? And so the only place to get it is from us. And so pulling from this and what Hannah is doing with WNET was also one of the ideas that sparked us into creating the student council, creating that platform where we're able to have students that are involved in public media. We're not just, bringing them to the table, as I say, to pick their brains and take information from them, and now, invite them to be a part of us. And so I'm really excited about the work that public media stations are now starting to do to amplify student voices, because what I've learned is that it's not that students don't have the voices and not that they're not confident. They just need to be guided on how to use it in their way and in their own creativity to be innovative and unique. And so once you start having those conversations with them, it'll get them towards public media, them being the voices for us.
Well put. Very well put. I will jump in and say, I feel like one of the main things that humanity tends to forget as a whole is that we just want to be heard. That's all it ever is. We don't want to argue. Well, sometimes people want to argue, but that's just how life is. But most of the time, we just want to talk. We want to be able to turn around and feel like, okay, someone's listening. I'm not being ignored. I'm not being lost to the sands of time. I'm actually being heard and I get to say something. And I have to commend just everybody in this group call for just allowing someone to have a voice, because it's not easy. And I know I sit here representing the youth and Gen Z, I suppose is what you would call me. And people tend to have some views on us, but I will say it's just nice to be heard. And it's very nice that you managed to get kids to come in and actually do film, photography, digital art, because that is something I absolutely love. And so getting to see kids use it for their voice is just perfect. It's absolutely perfect.
Thank you, McKenna and Jasmine. I'm curious, and McKenna, we're going to get into some more of the work that you've done in just a little bit. But just thinking about with Hannah and Jeremy, this call, this was the way that you all connected, and right, the amplification of the voices of young folks is something the adults in this space are really passionate about. And I'm curious if there's how Jasmine and McKenna, was it through a specific call that you two first connected? And about your connection in terms of, especially thinking, Jasmine, about you feeling it important to amplify youth voices, have a seat at the table. And McKenna, you're just like, we just need to be heard. I just want a microphone. I just want to be seen. I don't want to argue, so just thinking about how you two first connected with one another.
So I'll start. Me and McKenna met. She applied for the MPB Student Council, and I want to go back first to how the Student Council was brought to us. My education director, Dr. Tara Wren, had an idea, and we've been doing a lot of research as it pertains to what will news, television, radio look like for the next generation. We all know that generations have different way of intake of media, and so we figured out through that research that it was going to slightly change, especially with social media. So news can't be the same way. Radio can't be the same way. And if we really, really, really want to get students in, we have to kind of meet them at their level. And so through the Cooney Center, we were able to do some research as it pertains to Gen Z, specifically Gen Z, and how it's very important to make sure that we're incorporating them into public media, because they're going to be the faces, they're going to be the leaders of this. And so through that research, we wanted to kind of figure out how could we get students in, and not necessarily get students who are just interested in just filmmaking and media, but those who are just willing to learn about it, those who have a voice about things that matter to them, their peers. And so we wanted to create a group of students or a council, and that way where they can share those ideas with each other, as well as tie it to specific projects, because we do believe that if we're going to give students something, they had to have something that's theirs. And so we're all inclusive when it comes to, this is your project. We're here to help you. We're here to guide you, but this is your project, and to give you that experience, because sometimes, as McKenna spoke, they have voices, but they also just want that experience to be creative, to be unique. And so we were able to form our MPB Student Council, where we wanted to bring students in who could be the champion causes, not just for their communities and schools and peers, but also be champion causes for our public media stations, and say, hey, this is what public media is doing. We're here for the students. We have these particular projects. And so this is one of our very first projects with students. We're actually coming to the end of our first year next month. And so we've had a really, really great time going through meeting students. We did have an interview process that went through. And part of our process was reaching out our partnerships with the school system, superintendent, counselors, parents, especially parents. And so we pushed it. We had over like 500 applications. We went through those applications. We kind of already had an implementation plan that we only want like a small number just to start out with. And so we picked our inaugural 8. McKenna Mead is a part of our inaugural 8, and she has a very interesting story of how she was able to join the student council with doubts of not even being chosen. And another thing that I want to talk about is that we weren't just geared in a specific area. So we have council members that are across the state of Mississippi, and McKenna is one of those lucky ones from across the state, not even far to us. I think, McKenna, you are 2 hours or 3 hours away from us. And so
Around
just to
3.
be able around 3, just to be able to have that pool where we're not just pulling in one area, but we're making sure that we're reaching all. And so I'll turn over to McKenna to kind of disclose her opinion of how she came about with the MPB Student Council.
I want to start it off first by, I'm a small town girl. And so my whole thing with the council was, I was sitting there thinking they will never choose me because I'm a small town girl. I'm not super popular. If you know me, you know that I'm pretty much a mousy bookworm. I keep to myself. I have my few friends, and I am happy. I ended up joining Career Technical Center, which is, I think it was the West one. Yes, it was the West one that I ended up joining. And I was a part of the digital media program. And my teacher comes up to me one day and she goes, hey, I heard about this program. Here's a flyer. I think you should go for it. I was like, I don't know. I don't think they'll choose me. And she looks at me and she goes, you need to do it. You really need to do it. Because I had experience before. I had helped them with a documentary called Musicians for LeBonner. And I ended up being the interviewer. And the person who was in charge of it turned around and goes, has she ever done this before? My teacher was like, no. And he's like, she needs to do it more. He's like, she has got to figure it out. So I ended up joining the council. I was interviewing, and I can remember the whole time just sitting there thinking to myself, they're not going to choose me. There is no way. It is a cold day in heck before they will ever choose me. This is not happening. And I got off the council meeting. Well, that was an interview. I got off the interview. I was very, very nervous. I was very scared. And I sat down. I went, I'm not going to get it. And then 2 days later, I got an email, and they're like, hi, you're a part of the council. I was like, oh, okay. And I ended up joining it, and it has been one of the best decisions I think I've ever made. And I owe it all to my teacher, who really pushed me and said, I think you can do this. And she also threatened to give me a failing grade if I didn't. But it was all in the end. It was very good.
Oh, wow. Thank you for that story, McKenna, that context, Jasmine. Yeah, there's so much in there about the role of adults in amplifying and supporting a spark they see in young people, the role of young people taking an opportunity, initiative. And that actually leads us into our next segment. Because Jeremy, you had the opportunity as a part of the Amplify series with WNET's Youth Collective to create some content. And so we're gonna play this content, which is about 1 minute long, and then got some questions for you. So let's play it.
Me, sophomore year of high school, still as unhappy as ever. So what happened next? After years of low self-esteem and letting the voice in the back of my head tell me I wasn't good enough or deserving of friends, I had enough. Something had to be done. It started with a simple Google search, but before I knew it, I found a plethora of resources on meditation guides and journaling practices, etc. I quickly implemented the strategies I learned, and slowly but surely the doubts and stresses in my brain began to subside. I can now happily say that my life has done a full 180. I am now comfortable with myself and being by myself. This is my senior year of high school. Huge difference in comparison to the past 2 photos. And you know what? Here's the thing. Anybody can go through the same transformation as me. If you're interested, in the next video, I'll cover some of the strategies that help me overcome my insecurities. I hope to see you there.
Wow. First, I want to share, Jeremy, thank you for, the bravery, the honesty, the intention in which you made that video. And I know that might have been a few years ago, but I'm just curious about what sparked in you the drive to create that video, and what's it like seeing that video here today?
Yeah, totally. I just think the inspiration behind that video it stemmed from the difficulties of adolescence. I feel like every generation kind of has their own unique problems of growing up due to like cultural, social, political, or like technological movements, whatever. And for like Gen Z, for youth, I think a lot of problems or issues stem from like social media, because I feel like in this day and age, communication, getting updates on relationships or reaching out to people has never been easier. But at the same time, we've never felt more alone or insecure about ourselves, especially during this developmental period. And I feel like the common reaction is to try to do something that kind of like fills that hole. Like you might try to get validation on social media or ignore your emotional needs, just focus on school and extracurriculars. Just say to yourself, like, who needs self-care? Like you can just push that to the side. And I feel like it's just this really toxic cycle. And for me, just really hit this breaking point where I just really wanted to find a solution. And thankfully this whole world of like wellness and self-help really opened to me after I really did my research. And it was just something that I really fell in love with, because it made me understand that like listening to this voice in the back of your head is something that's needed. McKenna said that it's a human thing to want to be heard. And like, so we all know that bottling up emotions is never a good idea. So I feel like some of these strategies that I shared, which include journaling or meditation, kind of helps you to ground yourself and just allow that voice in your head to speak, because there's all this stimuli that's constantly distracting us. There's all these things that are trying to grab our attention. And I just wanted to share my experience and let people know that you don't really need validation from others or need to be surrounded by other people to feel good or complete. At the end of the day, all you really need is yourself, which is why I ended up creating those 2 short video segments.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeremy. And I know we only saw the one, but I just watched that, and now hearing you speak about it, just once again think about adults or other connections with people in my own life, how supportive that video was. So just really grateful for that. And Jasmine, I know that there was also a student council podcast at MPB, also on mental health. And I'm just curious in seeing that video and maybe in working to support students at MPB make their own video. Curious how you saw that video of Jeremy's and what it brought up for you.
So one thing that is very prevalent and relevant is the conversation about mental health. And what we find is that no one really talks about it. Depending on your cultural structure, how you were raised, it's just a conversation that a lot of people don't like to talk about. And necessarily, it's not that they don't have anything to say, they just don't know how to say it. or how to express how you feel. So me watching Jeremy's video, which I commend you and I thank you for sharing your story, because your story is a lot of other student stories as well. Recently we did our mental health, and that was prompt because we had just had a suicide attempt that happened with a school student. And so we knew that some of the student council members were a part of that school. And so we wanted to kind of have that conversation, because you never know necessarily how you feel, how to go through that. And so what we learn, and when we get older, I call it the cycle, the pass down cycle, is sometimes we forget to go back to the youth and talk to them about mental health. Mental health hasn't just started to yesterday or today. It's been around for a long time. And so I think that it's very important to have those conversations, but as well as allow the youth to tell their stories. Not us trying to create a story, create a narrative. No, allow them to be able to express their experiences with mental health, because mental health hit those differently. Jeremy, I definitely resonate with you, because I was a person in my adolescence. I valued validation. I was a people pleaser. If nobody was pleased, it made me shut down inside. And that became I was very, very insecure throughout the years. And then you tapped into something that you said. You have to really learn how to be to yourself, to figure out yourself, because before you can involve other people. And I think that was one of the perfect steps as it pertains to mental health, is figuring out who you are. It starts there. Mental health starts with you. And so we were able to do a podcast, and that just kind of geared the narrative. But I noticed that a lot of students were kind of nervous about talking about it. They've never had the platform to express how they feel, or just how they feel about just scenarios. And the major thing that came up was, if I am close to someone, or I have a family member or a friend that is experiencing, mental health, what are the solutions? And so I thought it was really great that we was able to have a podcast where we didn't only say, hey, you need help, tell us you need help, or it's okay to not be okay. We were actually able to provide resources for them, hotline numbers, just like Jeremy mentioned. It's very important, because a lot of students, they don't know, and a lot of students don't feel comfortable going to their school counselor. The important people in their lives are either their parents or their friends. And so if they don't know how to help them, it's just like, well, what do we do? And what we have to do is just start having the conversation. It doesn't necessarily have to be, conversation just specifically geared towards suicide, but just in general, from low self-esteem, stress. Like, school is a lot. Being balanced, know how to step away, know how to be balanced in your tasks and your project. And so Jeremy, I commend you for your video. I really, really enjoyed it, and hopefully maybe we can do some work, or partner and do some work later, because I think mental health is very important, and that conversation shouldn't stop today.
Thank you, Jasmine. And yeah, I want to hold a little space for McKenna and Hannah to share anything, but you all are actually touching on a topic that will be a future webinar topic, actually around mental health and well-being. So you are priming us for that conversation. And yeah, Jeremy, you mentioning the resources, counselors, hotlines, different ways that folks can feel supported. And Jasmine, I believe that you all in your episode also had professionals as psychologists as you were doing the filming and recording, and so those conversations. So yeah, there's so much wisdom here, and I think what I'm taking away just from hearing you all talk is about how do we find resource that will support us and one another, and professionals and experts. So yeah, such a rich combo. Hannah and McKenna, anything you want to add in terms of how you see it before we move on to our last clip?
I certainly have something to add, but Hannah, do you want to go first?
You go first, and I'll add.
Okay. I will say that my friends used to consider me the therapist or the mom friend, where it was expected of me to take care of them, because maybe their parents weren't all there, or maybe they didn't have a good home life, and I was expected to take care of them. And what happened is I ended up getting very drained. I got burnt out, I got angry, I got tired, and I told them, I don't want to do it. I want to be your friend, but I don't want to take over the role of a mother for you. And it was almost like they were trying to romanticize suicide. And I've seen that's a huge issue on social media. Like, they would hop on social media and be like, God, if I could just hurt myself, or God, if I could just do this, it'll feel so much better. I'm like, that's not a solution. But at the same time, I understood why they did that, because whenever we went to counselors or whenever we went to someone to try and help us, we were ignored. We were told we don't know the true meaning of pain. We don't know the true meaning of being suffering. We don't know suicide. We don't know anything. And so it ended up, I would be up at 3 a.m. on a school night, desperately searching online. Okay, how do I convince my friend that they need to stay, that they are wanted? And it just, they would post on social media and it was almost like a feedback. Someone would go, yeah, I feel the same way, oh, mood, you want to die together? It was stupid. It was awful. And it was just romanticized. And I think that's not good. And I think especially getting to have a voice and getting to talk is just helps people. It just helps everyone involved. It helps adults understand where the youth's coming from, and it helps the youth realize, okay, pain isn't all there is. There's more to this life than just wanting to die. There's nothing really in wanting to die. And that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah. Thank you, McKenna. Holding that. Whew. And yeah, I'm just taking a breath as I receive all of that sharing. Yeah. Whew. And want to hold space for Hannah if there's anything else you want to share. From your perspective, how you see it.
Yeah, well, and I also just thanks McKenna for sharing that, and that's heavy and hard to hear, but appreciate your honesty in sharing that. And I think when I see Jeremy's piece, and I've had the privilege of being a part of the process and seeing it many times, but seeing it again today, I'm just really struck by the bravery in that kind of like sharing of a personal story. And what I want to share, like Jeremy, one of your early drafts, he shared a script with us and there were a lot of revisions and back and forth. And one of the earliest drafts, you shared a strategy that I won't spoil, spoiler alert, you'll have to watch Jeremy's second video to see it, but there's a strategy that I had never heard of before. And it was great. And I read it and I was like, I'm going to try that. And when I'm feeling overwhelmed or when I'm feeling this, and I think, this comes back to McKenna's point too, about like wanting to be heard. And something that I think is so valuable about Jeremy's piece and a lot of other youth produced media is that it's created by Gen Z and it's for Gen Z often. And also that's not the only audience that can benefit from seeing this. Adults, I think that we feel that amplifying youth voice means amplifying it not only to other young people, but to adults and to, different generations. And my small moment of the benefit of seeing Jeremy's piece for my own benefit and my own, oh my gosh, what a great strategy the next time I'm feeling like really overwhelmed or something, to me is an indicator of how important it is that youth media is not only in this, the lane of youth media is just for youth to also consume. It's also for adults. It's for every age and every audience. And that's something that in seeing Jeremy's piece and seeing some of the other amplified pieces that I think is really, really crucial about youth created media.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for sharing the sharings connected to Jeremy. That piece you made was a catalyst for this conversation. So I'm grateful for your reflections after that, all of the sharings that we've had in this time. And we have 1 to 2 more pieces of content that we want to continue to get your perspectives on. And yeah, as you're watching, we're going to switch down to MPB because McKenna, you've also been at the center of some different initiatives, creating different content, and so we want to bring in some of your pieces here into the conversation and the actions that you've taken to get perspective on how folks see it. So we're going to run a clip and then we'll have a conversation about it.
I feel like the dress code kind of places an expectation, which I think is unfair on the students because it's not our job to create the learning environment. And so when you take us out of class, what you're doing is you're changing a workplace environment where all I can think about is, is my chest too big? Is it showing? Or my knees are showing? Am I going to get it dress coded? And I think that's unfair. And I feel like, yes, females are more widely targeted, but I also feel like if you're going to target females, you need to target males or just stop targeting us at all. I just want to get this out there. I feel like the uniform doesn't help at all because we're not considering it creates a divide, a social economic divide.
So McKenna, you're getting charged up in that all throughout, but especially at the end. Would love to just start with you and just share about how you came to this topic. How did you and student council decide to make an episode, amplify the topic, and yeah, just when you hear that back, like if any new learnings or ideas or reflections come up for you.
So we ended up choosing the topics based on a vote, and I know that I submitted the dress code specifically because I have personal stakes in the dress code. I was wearing a sweater one day and I got dress coded because the sweater didn't reach my fingertips. It reached my hip. And so the teacher came up to me, and even though when I lifted my arms, the sweater was all right, the teacher was still mad about it. And so I ended up getting dress coded, and I wasn't able to learn the entire day. I had to sit there and wait for someone to come bring me a sweater, and I'm already wearing a sweater. I was like, are you kidding? Like, come on. And so we ended up talking about it as a council because the more we looked into it, the more we realized that, yes, there is a system in place, and it is only to benefit mainly the male majority. Because the male teachers, I was dress coded by a male teacher, and that sucks. And I was dress coded by a female teacher, and they both reacted differently. The male teacher was much more, leaning in, kind of like patting my shoulder, and it was uncomfortable, and I was not happy about it, but I just accepted it. It's easier to accept it than fight it. And looking back, I'm more mad at myself that I didn't fight it. It's a sweater. Like, come on, guys. And so the council ended up talking about it. I brought on one of my friends, and we all discussed it. And one of the points brought up by a principal was he mentioned that maybe uniforms could help fix this, and that absolutely will not help fix it. Because what happens if someone who's in a poor economic status has to get a uniform? They have to waste their money that they are going to use on food, rent, shelter, anything on that uniform. And it's not worth the cost. Just, in my opinion, I understand, yes, we're not going to show up to school in bikinis or nothing like that. That's stupid. Of course it is. But let us wear shorts and tank tops in summers. I mean, there are boys during sports. They'll just take off their shirts and run around in boxers. Like, you can't let us wear shorts to school. And thinking about it now, I still get pretty fired up because I got to hear from principal's point of view, right? And the principal kind of helped me calm down a bit. I was like, I get it. You're just following the rules. But at the same time, dress coding over a sweater, dress coding over a skirt that doesn't hit my knees, it's just not worth it. It's not. And I'd love to hear Jeremy's thoughts on it because I know he's around my age and he's a male. And so I want to see if he was ever really treated differently for it.
Totally. Thanks, McKenna, for giving me a space. Yeah, my experience growing up, like thankfully, obviously, as a man and growing up in a school system where the dress code has never been like, from what I know, not super like strict. I do understand that obviously I'm privileged to not be like super like singled out in terms of this topic, and it is something that hasn't, because I'm like privileged in this manner, I've never really needed to pay close attention to. But yeah, I totally think you bring up a good point. It's definitely a contentious issue. Yeah, you bring up a good point with like the uniforms, how it might not even benefit everyone because of socioeconomic statuses. And I also think there's the important point of going back to identity. I think also a lot of students kind of want to represent their uniqueness and kind of who they are based on the clothes that they wear, and enforcing a uniform for everyone might kind of restrict voice in that manner, because voice doesn't necessarily just have to be the words you speak, but also the actions, that how you act or how you dress or how you present yourself can also speak volumes in themselves.
I think this is such an interesting conversation, and McKenna, it was really just like awesome to get to hear your perspective during this conversation, but also as part of the podcast. And like, again, that there's a platform and a way to talk about this thing that you're very passionate about. And what was really exciting to me as I was listening was just, there are so many topics and there's so many conversations to be had, right? Like there are not enough summits in the world that we could cover every single one of them. And so to have different formats that public media specifically can, create space and have, whether it's short videos, whether it's podcast episodes, to bring out conversations that, just are happening in your community, are happening like in your very school, was just like a really exciting thing to get to hear. And it's also really interesting to hear, McKenna, you talk about, and then I did talk to my principal about it. And like, we did have a conversation, and you being like, I kind of see, I see this part of his perspective. And also I disagree on this part of his perspective, and here's why. And I think to me, that's like where public media, where youth voice, where that intersection is happening in the most successful way. Because there's actual dialogue, there's actual ability to bring out different perspectives, and there's an opportunity for young people to bring the topics they're passionate about to these conversations. So yay, McKenna, yay, Jasmine.
I'm going to chime in, and I love what you said about bringing perspectives, different perspectives on the table. So one interesting thing, this is one of my exciting and like intense episodes that we did because, of course, McKenna was our lead moderator. And what we also were able to do, and I'll be sure to drop the link so you can hear the rest of the episode, was we invited specific people to the table to have those discussions with. So most of the time we talk about it as students, they talk about it with their peers and don't really come up with a plan of action of how they can get their voice out there, how to kind of talk about it in a, subtle way, but explain like, hey, this is affecting me. You're making decisions that are affecting me, or you're doing things to me that are affecting me. So on that particular episode, we were able to have the superintendent from one of the schools of our council members. We was able to have 2 teachers from different areas, different high schools, as well as we brought parents to the conversation, because it's always important to hear different perspectives. You hear your child say, well, I got dress coded for this. I got dress coded for that. What are the parents saying at home? What is the superintendent intended perspective? What are the teachers' perspective? What are the rules governing this? How do they go about governing dress code? And so it was super excited to kind of let the students kind of not necessarily go in, but kind of go in a way of learning like, hey, this is important to me. There's a way to have a conversation where, as McKenna said, you don't have to be rude. You don't have to, be hard, although you're passionate, but there's a way to enchannel that passion and have a conversation. And so it was a really great roundtable conversation. And one of the second part of that is that we did a round table with the students, and we had brought another student on board just to kind of get different perspectives of how dress codes affect us. And sometimes we do make decisions as adults and we don't think about, as the key word is always bringing students to the table. We make these decisions and they never have any input, or you never even invite them to have an understanding of why your perspective is this. And so I really enjoyed the round table discussion and being able to have a teachable moment to say, this is how you have these conversations about things that affect you. Because one thing I can say about Gen Z, they are not afraid to speak up. They're not afraid to speak out. And they're not afraid to tell you like, no, I'm not doing this. This doesn't benefit me or fit me. And so I like to call Gen Z the generation that says what we all wanted to probably say at one point in time in our life, and we couldn't say it. And it's like, yes, get them. But then it's like, okay. You said your part. Let's just make sure that they hear us. And so it was really great seeing the students kind of just, and it wasn't just McKenna. If you go listen to the episode, a lot of them were like, oh, you're on it, you're hitting the right points. And it was just so fun to see how excited they were to just be sitting at the table, like, whoever, you don't get to see the superintendent, you don't get to see your teachers. They have busy schedules at school, but to be able to provide the environment where it's like, okay, we're not going to throw the rock and hide our hands anymore. It's time to be, big boys and girls and have a conversation and be understanding of perspective and say, well, hey, I may not agree with it, but I understand your perspective and I would try to, be better, or, hey, I understand your perspective. Maybe we should look at the dress code policy and change it. And so they were change makers in that episode, and I was just super excited that, they were able to have that opportunity.
Wow. I would like to jump in. I'd like to say, I know that Gen Z kind of has a reputation of being the unshakable kind of generation, instantly fighting for change and unafraid of anything. But I will say we are afraid. We know the system, we know what we're up against, and we recognize that. And even though we're afraid, we recognize it has to be done. It has to be fixed, and it has to be talked about. It can no longer be swept under the rug. And I feel like that's what inspires a lot of us to keep moving. I know for me personally, I feel like I need to fix the system. I need to help fix it. I need to do something. And thankfully I've been given platforms to do that. And so that's my plan. Plan to keep working like that. I don't know if it's the same for Jeremy, but I feel like even though we're scared, we got to.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like, oh, sorry, I'm just getting a call. Let me just stop that. Sorry about that. No, I think you bring up a really good point. I really think it should be like the response. I'm so sorry. How do I turn this off?
You're good, Jeremy. You're all good. Busy. They trying to get to you. Listen, they want to hear your thoughts. They want to hear your thoughts. Tell them you're sharing your thoughts with us.
Yeah, that just threw off my train of thought. But no, I just think it's the responsibility of youth to really do their part to kind of take a step forward, kind of push the world forward. Because I think every generation grew up with these ideals that hopefully build on top of what the previous generation does, whether it be progressive things, whether it be mistakes. I think that's something that makes humanity so grateful, is the fact that we're able to listen and learn from mistakes, because obviously we like to think that every generation as they come through, they really do their best. And then the next generation has to learn from the previous generation and try to improve upon that. So I think, McKenna, you do bring up a great point, because we are kind of the ones that are going to step into these higher positions in the next decade or two. It is like a really imminent thing that's on our minds, because we know that this is a crucial time for us to really learn and make a big impact in the future. So I think that's a completely valid point that you bring up.
Yeah. This is, once again, I'm just very grateful for all of the sharings and the conversations, the cross-pollinations that are happening and catalyzed, McKenna, by your incredible, you speaking truth to power, your truth, or, opening this dialogue up, and for this broader conversation, the way that civic dialogue, and thinking about the role of public media in creating these forums and spaces for civic dialogue, amplifying issues that affect communities. And maybe it starts in schools, but as you were saying at the end of that piece, McKenna, how class and other parts of somebody's experience gets, it was in that moment about uniforms, right? It wasn't just about uniforms. There was so much other context and information to that piece, this issue that you brought up. So and just want to lift up and think about public media's role in helping us to have conversations and bringing them into the light for us to have. It's just a critical thing that public media does. So we got to just experience that through both of your pieces, both of what you all shared and created. And what happens when you having a great time flies, so we are unfortunately at the end of our time, or nearing the end of our time. So we're going to move into our last segment that's called One Thing. So this is just an opportunity for folks to give just, a few sentences, either something that hasn't been in the conversation yet, or something you didn't get the chance to share and you just want to share. And we'll actually start with you, McKenna, and then go around.
I fully believe that to learn about people, you have to be willing to listen. And I feel like if everyone can just maybe put aside their political parties, see over the red and blue banners and meet person to person, eye to eye, I feel like we can actually achieve something. And even over political stances, maybe, you can't understand someone because of a language barrier. If you can look at them and show that you're trying, you are listening, you are doing your best, pull out Google Translate and just try. I feel like once you show someone, hey, I'm listening, I care, I'm trying my best to understand you, I feel like it helps make everyone much more kind, helpful, happy, and it's just, you really have to listen is all I'm really think I can add to this. I think I've said everything I want to say. I want to say thank you for all of this, and especially, I mean, thank you to everyone for talking and getting to, say your piece.
Thank you, McKenna. Jeremy, over to you for that one thing.
Totally. I guess I just wanted to thank you guys, Dwight, Hannah, and Jasmine, for giving us this space to talk, because obviously we as Gen Z, we do have our ideas, but it wouldn't really be possible without people like you all who really give us this space. Because while we obviously have these ideals, we do understand that we're growing up and we still do need guiding beacons like you guys who can help us, guide us when we might be steering slightly off course, and really help us fulfill our potential. So I feel like we talk about like youth and how we're up next and we have all this potential, but at the end of the day, a crucial piece of the puzzle is also having important mentor figures like you all who can help us whenever we need, who can support us, and who can give us that ear to listen to. So I just want to say thank you guys so much for doing this kind of thing.
Thank you, Jeremy. Hannah, over to you.
Oh man, thanks, Jeremy. It's funny that that is what you were gonna say about like mentorship, because I think the one thing that I love, one of my colleagues says this all the time, Christina Kirtley. She says, youth are not going to be part of our communities. They're a part of our communities. It's a part of our community, and public media is representing, your local communities, whether that's in a very, a small local community, whether that's nationally. And so inviting young people to be part of creating media, being part of conversations, the community engagement work that we do, that's not one day, that's now. That's young people are part of those communities now, our communities. And so when creating with young people, I think that, there's also school and schedules and things going on. So I do think that, creating more space and being intentional on behalf of public media is really important to make sure that that the way that we bring young people into conversations sets everyone up for success, mostly young people, but it's today, it's right now that we need to be having those conversations, that we need to be creating space to amplify youth voice, to be bringing their perspectives into conversations and into the work that we do. So, and I just want to say thank you all so much, and especially to Jeremy and McKenna for bringing your voices and for collaborating with us and taking that risk as well.
Thank you, Hannah. And last but not least, sending it over to you, Jasmine.
All right. So first, I want to say thank you. Thank you to the Cooney Center. Thank you, Dwight. Thank you, Hannah, Jeremy, McKenna, and us being able to be a part of this webinar. This is bigger than what we could have ever imagined it to be, and I know this is going to go way further than what we're thinking. And so the one thing that I was sitting here thinking about, just going over the webinar, what we're doing, and I always like to leave encouragement, just for anyone. And so 3 words that came to mind was continue to be intentional, resilient change makers. That means a lot, not just in public media, not just to students, but to yourself as well. Continue to be intentional about the work you do. Be resilient in the work you do, and continue to be change makers. I'm at awe for everything that WNET is doing, NPB, and all the other public media stations. We were able to receive a grant through the Cooney Center that actually helped to sponsor our student council. And so we've learned so much about how intentional our work can be. And like Hannah mentioned, it doesn't just touch one person. We're creating content that's going to touch generations after generations after generations to come. So don't stop that drive. Don't stop that push for yourself and at your public media stations. Jeremy and McKenna, you both are a shining light. Continue that. Continue on your journey. I know they always make jokes about Gen Z, but Gen Z is very special. Very, very special. I see leadership in both of you, and I want you to continue on this journey to reach beyond your goals and dreams and beyond your opportunities. And I thank you for everything that you shared. It has not only helped just me giving an idea of what I want to go to next, but as well as we're on the right track. You just gave me the thumbs up that we're on the right track. If we continue these conversations, Hannah, we continue these partnerships with each other and coming together, Dwight and Colin, coming together to have these type of webinar, who's to say what can happen in the next coming years? So I thank you again for the opportunity. Jeremy and McKenna continue to shine bright, and I'm looking forward to future work from you all.
Wow. Jasmine, Hannah, Jeremy, McKenna, just thank you for this incredible conversation. Incredible. I feel like we did time traveling. I feel like we got powered up. I feel like we learned tools and resources. We held space for stories and sharings, and this conversation would not have been what it was without each and every one of your expertise, your brilliance, your just amazingness. And so just thank you so much. And we will be in conversation with you soon, whether through rewatching this or through other ways. Can't wait to see what you do with all of your brilliance in the world. So friends watching, thank you for joining us as well. And we'll see everyone very soon.